Hello everyone, and in this Hops Quickie I just wanted to go over some things involving the grid in Hops Tool. So let us press X and delete the cube. We'll press Alt W to jump over to Hops Tool. And here we can see an option for grid objects. We're going to go to Circle, which will give us a circle grid. Now if we take a look at the geometry by pressing Alt V and then going to wireframe, we can see that it isn't the best geometry whenever it comes to bending such a shape. And that comes down into how it was constructed, seeing that there's an edge in the middle, but this one actually is divided into two, and we see that happening across all of these, how they are crossed. So what we can do is actually take a moment and make a better grid. So let's just press H and hide that. We'll just bring in a new plane, and with this new plane we are just going to subdivide it with right click subdivide and then press Shift R to repeat a couple of times. What I'll do is use select, and instead of using select boundary, we're just going to invert that so we get this part, and I'm just going to press Q, and if we hover over circle we can see that clicking control will allow us to basically convert the invert to a circle. So we want to bring it down where we have only one point on the inside. If we roll the wheel and we have 2 points, that's just more to solve, resulting in a rounder circle, but will make it stranger to connect. In fact, for the initial rehearsal I used only one, but just to be weird, let's use two, just to have fun, see what happens if you don't listen. So what we'll do is apply that. We'll press X and delete faces while we have that selected. At this point I'm going to go ahead and use insolve, so I'm going to press Alt 1 and we're going to jump over to insolve, and with us already in join, we're just going to make the connections, solving the shape, and we're done. In fact, if we want to make our lives even easier, we can do it 4 more times, just to allow us to take exactly what we want instead of using mirror. So let us grab these. I'm just holding control and just selecting in between. One of my favorite things in Blender is just selecting in between. Let's control I, we delete the faces, and here we are with the piece that we need. Not my favorite geometry in all honesty. In fact, for it to bend proper, something like that would probably be a little more optimal. Let us bring these down here and then merge them, and maybe we can actually get something that's satisfactory for bending. So I'm just bringing these together, merging them, dissolving, something like that, and we could even click on analyze and we see that we are good to go. Let's press Q and go under set origin, and we're just going to set our origin at this point. And what this means is if we Alt X, we can mirror. We can also Alt X and mirror again by clicking the side we want to keep. And now it gets a lot easier. So let's press Q, we array. It's automatically placed right on top whenever you start array. So all we have to do is just roll the wheel while we're inside the dead zone circle, and we're good to go. In fact, we could have pressed A to add another array, but instead I'm just going to control click array, and we'll press 1, maybe Shift 1 to precisely place it on the other side of that geo, which I've always enjoyed. And now we have some geometry that actually connects up. In fact, I think there could be an even better solution in between, but me just being random here, this is what I came up with. So now to test out this result, there's a couple of ways we can do it. One of my favorites is just to Shift A, bring down a curved circle, and we'll place it like so. Select the curve, Control P, and if you have the selection order correct, meaning you select the object, then you shift select the curve, you can press Control P, and we choose curve deform, and it will just set us up good to go. And we got lucky this time, but I also remember that in Hops you have in the Q menu curve modifier, which means that when you add that, you actually have the option to go through the axis and choose the right axis, which is something I always wish Blender had, and who knows, maybe it will have that now. But we see that now that we are pairing it to the curve, we can just bring this in. In fact, for this particular part of the workflow, let's scale the curve so it perfectly meets up, or as perfect as we can see it with the eye. And then we'll select this and go under add modifier, control click weld, and we'll add a weld, roll the wheel once, and now we know it's connected. So let's Alt V, turn off wireframe, and this is our shape. Let's press Q and we'll solidify. Let's shift click sharpen in order to auto smooth it, and now we have basically created a deformable version of the grid shape. So if I press Alt H, we can bring back the original version where I can actually scale this one up to be the appropriate size, like so. So they're kind of similar, and then we can Alt V and look at their wireframes just to compare the two. So this is what we get whenever you just procedurally just drop it using Hops tool, because it was just a little quickie little idea. And here we see where we actually have corrected the geometry into something that's more manageable. So with that, I believe you get the point. So I'll end this video and see you guys next time.